The Wednesday night Diane Simmons got fired was the night she discovered her favorite customer wasn't human. The Crimson Rose hummed with its usual midnight energy. Low jazz bleeding from hidden speakers, candlelight catching crystal glasses, the kind of wealthy clientele that paid premium prices for atmosphere and discretion. Diane moved through the shadows between tables with practiced efficiency, 3 years of muscle memory guiding her steps across the worn hardwood floors. And in the corner booth, like clockwork, sat Matt Damien. Every Wednesday. Midnight exactly. Never a minute early, never a minute late. Silver gray eyes that seemed to catch the light wrong. A plate of rare steak he barely touched. The same quiet intensity that made her pulse spike every time she approached his table. For 3 years, Diane had convinced herself she was imagining things. The way he never aged. The way his skin stayed cold even in New Orleans' suffocating heat. The way he watched her move through the restaurant like he was memorizing every gesture, every breath. Tonight, all her careful denial would shatter. It started with a crying baby, escalated to public humiliation, and ended with 3 words that changed everything: I own this place. Because Matt Damien didn't just own the Crimson Rose. He owned the darkness itself. Vampire King. Immortal Predator. And for 3 years he'd been falling for a mortal waitress who served him blood-rare steak and careful smiles. Some truths you can't unsee. Some choices you don't come back from. This was both. The Wednesday midnight crowd at the Crimson Rose filled nearly every booth. Smooth jazz mixed with quiet conversation, punctuated by the clink of crystal and the scrape of silverware against porcelain. Diane Simmons moved between tables with practiced grace, balancing a tray of drinks in her left hand while her right reached for cleared plates. 26 years old, and she'd been doing this for 3 years now. She knew every squeak in the floorboards, every temperamental lock on the wine cellar door, every regular customer by name and order. She delivered cocktails to booth 3 without looking down. Muscle memory. Her mind was already calculating the next move. Booth 7 needed bread refilled. The couple at booth 5 would want dessert menus soon. The kitchen was running behind on the ribeye for booth 9. But first, booth 7. Matt Damien sat in his usual spot, the corner booth with a clear view of both the entrance and the kitchen. He'd been coming every Wednesday at midnight for 3 years. Not once early, not once late, always alone, always the same order. Diane approached with a basket of bread in one hand and a bottle of Bordeaux in the other. She set both down without making direct eye contact. Good evening, Mr. Damien. The ribeye tonight rare as always. Yes. His voice was quiet, controlled, with the faintest trace of an accent she'd never been able to place. Most people who came to the Crimson Rose either ignored Matt completely, pretending they didn't recognize one of the most powerful men in New Orleans underground, or they stared too long, whispering to their companions the moment he looked away. Diane did neither. She treated him exactly like every other customer. Professional, efficient, distant. Bordeaux room temperature. Still water, no ice. Correct. She wrote nothing down. She never did for him. 3 years of Wednesdays meant she had his routine memorized down to the second. He would finish the bread before the wine arrived. He would eat slowly, methodically. He would leave cash, always exactly 40% more than the bill. He would be gone by 1:15 a.m. Diane headed toward the kitchen to place his order when Bryant's voice cut through the ambient noise. Diane. My office. Now. She changed direction toward the small office near the bar where Bryant stood with his arms crossed. He'd been managing the Crimson Rose for exactly 2 weeks. The previous manager had quit without explanation, and Bryant had swooped in with his MBA and his spreadsheets and his complete lack of understanding about what made a place like this work. Bryant was 32, fresh from corporate hotel management, full of ideas about efficiency and profit margins. The staff had learned quickly that he cared more about numbers than people. Booth 4, Bryant said without preamble. Young mother with a screaming infant. She's been here 40 minutes and hasn't ordered yet. She needs to order or leave. Diane glanced through the office door toward booth 4. A woman in her mid-20s, clearly exhausted, bouncing a fussy baby while trying to read the menu one-handed. Iris Fletcher. She came in once a month, always late at night, always alone with her daughter. That's Iris, Diane said carefully. She's a regular. Her baby has colic. She comes here because we're one of the few places open late that doesn't make her feel judged. That's not how we're running things anymore. Booth 4 is prime real estate. We have people waiting. Tell her to order immediately or settle up and leave. She's not bothering anyone. We have empty booths. That's not the point. The point is maximizing revenue per seat per hour. This is basic restaurant economics. Diane felt her jaw tighten. She'd worked in enough restaurants to know that some things mattered more than economics. Compassion. Community. The fact that Iris's husband had walked out 3 months ago, and coming to the Crimson Rose was the one thing that made her feel human again. I'll check on her, Diane said quietly. But I'm not rushing her out. You'll do what I tell you to do. You're a server, not management. I'm aware of my position. Then act like it. Go tell her to order now or leave. Diane walked out of the office without responding. She approached booth 4 with a smile that felt tight on her face. Iris, honey, how are you doing tonight? The young woman looked up with exhausted eyes. Oh, Diane. I'm so sorry. Chloe won't settle down. I know she's loud. Don't apologize. Babies cry. That's what they do. Diane glanced at the menu still unopened on the table. Have you had a chance to look over the options? I can't decide. My brain's just mush tonight. How about I bring you the shrimp étouffée? It's your favorite. And some beignet for after. My treat. Iris's eyes filled with tears. You don't have to. I want to. Just sit. Breathe. Take your time. Diane walked back toward the kitchen, avoiding Bryant's glare from the office doorway. She placed Iris's order with the kitchen staff, grabbed Matt's ribeye from the pass, and was heading toward booth 7 when Bryant stepped directly into her path. What part of my instructions did you not understand? She's ordering now. There's no problem. There's every problem. You just undermined my authority. I handled the situation professionally. You ignored a direct order. Bryant's voice was rising now. Several nearby tables went quiet. Either you follow my instructions or you don't work here. Diane felt heat crawl up her neck. This wasn't the place for this conversation. Can we discuss this after service? No. We're discussing it now. Bryant moved past her into the dining room. Diane followed, her stomach dropping as she realized what he was about to do. He stopped at booth 4. His voice carried across the restaurant. Ma'am, I'm going to need you and your child to leave. You're disturbing other guests. Iris's face went pale. The humiliation was immediate and visible. Other diners turned to stare. The warm, intimate atmosphere that Diane worked so hard to maintain every shift shattered like dropped glass. I was just ordering. You've been here 40 minutes. This isn't a daycare. Leave. Diane stepped forward. Bryant, she's a paying customer. She was just about to. And you, Bryant rounded on her, are fired. For insubordination. Get your things and get out. The words hit like a physical blow. 3 years of work. 3 years of building relationships with customers, learning the rhythms of the kitchen, making this place feel like the closest thing she had to family. Gone in 5 words. Bryant, let's talk about this privately. There's nothing to talk about. You refused a direct order. You contradicted me in front of customers. You're done. Leave now. The humiliation was complete. Diane felt her face burning as she became aware of every stare. She recognized most of the faces in the room. People she'd served countless times. People who knew her name, asked about her sister, left generous tips. And Matt Damien, still sitting in booth 7, watching everything unfold with dark, unreadable eyes that suddenly seemed to glow silver in the candlelight. Diane turned toward the back to collect her belongings when she heard it. The scrape of a chair. Heavy. Deliberate. Then footsteps. Slow and measured. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Matt Damien stood now. His napkin placed carefully on the table. He wasn't particularly tall, but he commanded space in a way that made the room feel smaller. He wore black pants and a cream-colored shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with what looked like old scars that disappeared under the fabric. His watch caught the light, expensive, understated. His expression remained perfectly neutral. He walked toward Bryant. Not rushed. Not aggressive. But something about the way he moved made every person in the restaurant lean back slightly, giving him space. Bryant noticed him approaching. His confident anger faltered. He recognized Matt. Everyone in New Orleans who paid attention knew Matt Damien by sight, even if they pretended they didn't. Matt stopped 3 feet away from Bryant. He slipped one hand into his pocket. The gesture looked casual. It wasn't. "You're fired," Matt said quietly. Bryant laughed nervously. "Excuse me. I own this place. And you're fired." The silence that followed was absolute. Bryant's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, dawning horror. You can't. The owner is Gregory Laurent." "I bought the Crimson Rose from Gregory 2 months ago. The paperwork just cleared last week. I was going to announce it tomorrow night." Matt's voice remained soft, controlled. "But I've changed my mind. I'm announcing it now." He looked around the restaurant, addressing everyone. "I'm the new owner. Bryant is no longer employed here. Anyone who objects to that can leave with him." No one moved. Matt's attention shifted to Iris, still frozen in booth 4 with her crying baby. "Your meal is on the house tonight. Stay as long as you'd like." Then his eyes found Diane. And in that moment, in the flickering candlelight of the Crimson Rose at midnight, something impossible happened. His eyes caught the light wrong. Too silver. Too bright. Like they were glowing from within. Diane's breath stopped. Her rational mind tried to supply explanations. Trick of the light. Reflection from the candles. Fatigue making her see things that weren't there. But deep in her bones, in the part of her that still believed in monsters under the bed, she knew the truth. Those eyes weren't human. They never had been. "Stay," Matt said, his voice directed at her but somehow softer than it had been seconds before. "Please." And when his lips moved, when he spoke that single word, Diane saw them. Fangs. White. Unmistakable. The restaurant spun. Her vision tunneled. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. 3 years of careful professionalism, of maintaining distance, of pretending she didn't notice the things that didn't add up about Matt Damien. All of it collapsed under the weight of what she was seeing. Bryant was already backing toward the exit, his face drained of color. He stumbled over a chair and nearly fell. Then he was gone, the door slamming behind him. Matt stood in the center of the restaurant. Owner. Predator. Something ancient and dangerous wearing the shape of a man. His eyes never left Diane's face. "I need to," Diane's voice came out as a whisper. "I need to go." She turned and ran. Through the kitchen, past the shocked line cooks, out the back door into the New Orleans night. The humid air hit her like a wall, but she kept running. Behind her she heard nothing. No footsteps. No pursuit. Just the memory of silver eyes glowing in darkness. And the terrifying knowledge that her favorite customer, the man she'd been quietly, carefully drawn to for 3 years, wasn't a man at all. What happens when the person who saves you isn't human? When the eyes that have watched you for 3 years suddenly glow silver in the darkness, and the truth you've been avoiding slams into you with the force of centuries. Diane's world just shattered, and the pieces won't fit back together the same way. If you want to see how a waitress survives in a vampire king's world, if you need to know whether love can exist between predator and prey, subscribe now. Because what happens next in the Crimson Rose will change everything you thought you knew about desire, danger, and the price of protection. Don't miss a single moment. Hit subscribe before the night claims another soul. Diane's apartment was small, cluttered, and suddenly felt like the only safe place in the world. She locked the door, checked it twice, then collapsed against it with her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Her phone buzzed. 7 missed calls from the Crimson Rose. 3 text messages from co-workers asking if she was okay. 1 from Iris thanking her for her kindness and asking what happened. Nothing from Matt. She should have been relieved. Instead, the silence felt ominous. Diane opened her laptop with shaking hands and typed, "Matthias Damien, New Orleans." The search results loaded slowly, each one more impossible than the last. Historical records dating back to the 1700s. A shipping magnate who supposedly died in 1823. Property records showing continuous ownership of businesses throughout New Orleans for centuries, always under slight variations of the same name. Matt Damien, Matthew Dane, Matthias Davenport. And buried in obscure forums about New Orleans folklore. Whispers of the vampire king of the French Quarter. Protector of neutral territory. Ancient, powerful, dangerous. Diane slammed the laptop shut. This was insane. Vampires weren't real. They were stories, myths, Halloween costumes. Not men who sat in corner booths ordering rare steak and watching her with silver eyes that glowed in candlelight. Except she'd seen those eyes. Seen the fangs. She spent the next 2 hours pacing her apartment, trying to convince herself she'd hallucinated. Stress. Exhaustion. The trauma of being publicly fired. Her mind had invented an explanation that made no sense because the real world had stopped making sense first. The knock on her door came at 3 a.m. Diane froze. She knew, somehow impossibly, who it was. Diane. Matt's voice, quiet and controlled, came through the door. I'm not coming in without your permission. Vampire rules. But we need to talk. Her hands trembled as she approached the door. Go away. I can't do that. You're not real. This isn't happening. It is happening. And you deserve answers. Diane's fingers hovered over the lock. Every survival instinct screamed at her not to open the door. But beneath the terror was something else. Curiosity. The same pull she'd felt for 3 years every time he walked into the Crimson Rose. She opened the door. Matt stood in the hallway looking exactly as he had at the restaurant. No fangs visible now. No glowing eyes. Just a handsome man in expensive clothes who happened to be a predator wearing human skin. You're terrified, he said quietly. You should be. But I've never hurt you, Diane. In 3 years I've never hurt you. And I never will. What are you? The question came out as a whisper. You already know. Say it. Vampire. King of New Orleans territory. 317 years old. His expression remained calm, patient. I've been protecting you from other supernatural threats since the first night you served me. Things you never saw. Dangers I made sure never reached you. Diane's mind flashed to moments over the past 3 years. Times she'd felt watched on her walk home only to arrive safely. A man who'd followed her from the restaurant one night, then mysteriously disappeared. The feeling of being guarded even when she was alone. Why me? Her voice broke on the question. Why would you? Because you looked at me like I was human. Matt's eyes, normal brown now, no silver glow, held hers. For 3 years, you treated me with kindness and professionalism. No fear. No calculation. Just humanity. Do you know how rare that is? You're a monster. Yes. But I'm a monster who's been falling in love with you since the first night you remembered I'd take my water without ice. The confession hit her like a physical blow. Diane stepped back, her shoulders hitting the doorframe. I can't. I need this to not be real. I know. But it is real. And now you have to decide what comes next. Matt stayed carefully in the hallway, never crossing the threshold. You need a job. Your sister Jade is counting on you to help with her tuition. You have rent due in 8 days. I'm offering you a position as night operations manager at the Crimson Rose. Double your current salary. You work nights only, when I'm there. I keep you safe. Safe from what? From the things that go bump in the night. Trust me, Diane. Now that you know what I am, other things will start to notice you. You need protection. Diane wanted to refuse. Wanted to slam the door and pretend this conversation never happened. But Jade's worried texts about next semester's tuition were still on her phone. And standing there looking at Matt, really looking at him for the first time without the careful distance she'd maintained, she felt the truth she'd been suppressing for 3 years. He was drawn to him. Had been from the beginning. Why me? She asked again, softer this time. Really? Because you looked at me like I was human, Matt repeated. Because you remembered small details. Because you defended a young mother tonight even though it cost you everything. Because you're brave and kind and you make me feel like maybe 3 centuries of darkness haven't made me completely lost. The moment Matt's fangs descended, Diane had a choice. Run and pretend she never saw, or stay and face the terrifying truth that the man she'd been drawn to for 3 years was a predator who could drain her dry in seconds. What would you do? Would you trust 3 years of gentle looks and careful distance? Or would you let fear make the decision? Diane's choice will determine whether she lives to see tomorrow, and whether Matt's centuries of control finally break. Subscribe now to see what happens when a vampire king stops hiding and a mortal woman stops running. The next reveals secrets that will make your blood run cold. Don't look away now. The darkness is just beginning. I'm not your prey, Diane said finally, her voice stronger now. Matt smiled. A real smile that transformed his face. You never were. You were always something far more dangerous. What's that? Eye weakness. He reached up slowly, telegraphing the movement, giving her time to pull away. His hand was cold against her warm cheek. Not dead cold. Just different. The touch sent electricity through her nervous system. I'll come back, Diane whispered. Night operations manager. Double salary. But there are rules. Boundaries. Whatever you need. And if I ever want to leave, I'll let you go. No questions asked. Matt's thumb brushed her cheekbone gently. You're choosing this, Diane. Not because you're trapped. Because you're brave enough to choose the impossible. Diane closed her eyes, leaning into the touch for just a moment before stepping back. I must be insane. Probably. But the most interesting people usually are. She returned to the Crimson Rose the next night. As the new night operations manager. Walking back into the darkness beside a creature who could kill her with a thought but looked at her like she was the sun breaking through centuries of shadow. Some choices you don't come back from. Diane was starting to think maybe she didn't want to. Diane's first night back at the Crimson Rose felt like stepping into a different world. Because it was. The restaurant looked the same, but now she saw what she'd been missing. The bartender, Remy, moved with inhuman grace. The hostess, Colette, had eyes that reflected light like a cat's. Even the kitchen staff seemed different, aware, like they'd always known what lurked in the shadows. Welcome to the real world, said a voice behind her. Diane turned to find a man leaning against the bar, tall, dark-skinned, with sharp cheekbones and an amused smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He wore a tailored suit and emanated the same predatory stillness as Matt. Luca Moreau. Matt's second in command. Also dead for about 200 years, give or take. He extended his hand. You must be the mortal who's got our king all twisted up inside. Diane shook his hand, cold like Matt's. I'm just the operations manager. Sure you are. Luca's grin widened. And I'm just the hired help. Come on, sweetheart. Let me show you how things really work around here. Over the next 2 weeks, Diane learned the rules. The Crimson Rose was neutral territory, a rare space where different supernatural factions could meet without violence. Matt's power maintained the peace. His reputation ensured it. The restaurant was more than a business. It was a political statement. There are 3 vampire covens in New Orleans, Matt explained one night after closing, spreading a map across the bar. Mine, the Laveau Coven in the Garden District and the Rousseau Coven in the Marigny. We've maintained territorial balance for decades. But the Rousseaus have been getting ambitious lately. Diane studied the map, trying to absorb information that should have been impossible. What happens if the balance breaks? War. Matt's voice was flat. And mortals get caught in the crossfire. The late nights became a pattern. After the last customer left, after the staff cleaned and departed, it was just Diane and Matt in the empty restaurant. She'd do paperwork in the office while he reviewed security reports. Sometimes they'd talk. Sometimes they'd just exist in comfortable silence. It was during one of those quiet moments that Diane asked the question she'd been avoiding. Do you kill? Matt looked up from his laptop. His expression didn't change. Yes. Often. When necessary. What does necessary mean to a vampire? It means I protect what's mine. It means I eliminate threats before they become massacres. It means I'm not human, Diane. I'm a predator. I've been a predator for over 3 centuries. He closed the laptop. Does that terrify you? Yes. Good. It should. 2 nights later, Diane witnessed him feeding. She'd stayed late doing inventory in the wine cellar when she heard voices upstairs. Curiosity pulled her toward the stairs. Through the crack in the door, she saw Matt with a young man, willing, eager, even tilting his head to expose his neck. Matt's fangs descended. His eyes blazed silver. And when he bit down, the young man gasped. Not in pain but something disturbingly close to pleasure. Diane should have looked away. Should have given them privacy. Instead she watched, transfixed by the terrible intimacy of it. The predator and his prey, locked in an embrace that was both violent and tender. When Matt pulled back, lips stained red, he caught her gaze through the doorway. She fled to the wine cellar, heart hammering. Minutes later he appeared at the top of the stairs. I'm sorry you saw that. Are you? Diane's voice shook. Or is this part of what I signed up for? Both. Matt descended slowly, giving her space. I don't apologize for what I am. But I know it's difficult to witness. He looked like he enjoyed it. The bite releases endorphins. It's nature's mercy. Prey doesn't suffer. Matt stopped 3 feet away. I don't kill when I feed. Haven't in decades. But I won't pretend I'm not a monster. Diane should have been horrified. Should have run. Instead, she found herself stepping closer, drawn by the same magnetic pull she'd felt for 3 years. You have blood on your mouth, she whispered. Matt's eyes darkened. Diane. She reached up, touching the corner of his lips with her thumb. His hand caught her wrist, gently, carefully, and suddenly they were inches apart in the dim wine cellar, surrounded by bottles worth more than her yearly salary. I've wanted to kiss you since the first night you remembered I like my steak rare, Matt said quietly. But I won't. Not until you're sure. I'm not sure about anything anymore. Then I'll wait. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. I've waited 3 years. I can wait longer. The moment stretched, electric and dangerous. Then Diane pulled back and Matt let her go immediately. The threat came on a Thursday. Diane was closing out the register when a man appeared in the doorway, beautiful in that too perfect way she was learning to recognize. Vampire. Not one of Matt's. You must be Diane. His accent was Cajun, thick and deliberate. The mortal the king keeps as a pet. The restaurant is closed. I'm not here for food. He moved closer with predatory speed. I'm here to deliver a message. Tell Damien the Rousseau coven wants the Crimson Rose. And we're willing to negotiate, unless he'd prefer to make this difficult. Diane's hand found her phone. One button pressed. The panic signal Matt had insisted she program. Get out. The vampire laughed. Such fire. I can see why he likes you. Matt materialized between them so fast Diane didn't see him move. One moment the Rousseau vampire was reaching for her. The next he was slammed against the wall with Matt's hand around his throat. Matt's eyes blazed silver, fangs fully descended, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely controlled violence. Touch her, Matt said softly, and I'll make sure your death takes weeks. The Rousseau vampire's bravado crumbled. We're just testing boundaries. Test them again and I'll send your head back to your coven in a box. Matt's voice dropped to something inhuman, ancient, terrifying. Now leave. And tell your master that the Crimson Rose is mine. Diane is mine. And I don't negotiate with threats. He released the vampire who stumbled toward the exit and vanished into the night. Matt turned to Diane, the violence draining from his expression, replaced by concern. Are you hurt? No. But you... Diane stared at him, seeing fully for the first time the creature beneath the careful humanity. The Vampire King. The predator who ruled the darkness. You would have killed him. Without hesitation. She should have been afraid. Should have recognized the danger of standing next to something so deadly. Instead she felt something else entirely. Practed. Chosen. Wanted with an intensity that defied nature itself. Thank you, she whispered. Matt's expression softened. Always. For as long as you'll let me. And Diane realized with startling clarity that the most dangerous thing in her life wasn't the vampire standing in front of her. It was how much she was starting to want him anyway. The vampire guards appeared the next morning. 2 of them, stationed outside Diane's apartment building like supernatural secret service. She hated it immediately. This is ridiculous, she told Matt on the phone. I can't live like this. You can and you will. His voice was firm. The Rousseaus made their intentions clear. Until this is resolved, you're protected. I'm not a prisoner. No. You're someone I refuse to lose. The call ended before she could argue further. Her sister Jade noticed the changes first. They met for coffee on a rare afternoon when Diane wasn't sleeping off a night shift, and Jade's eyes were full of questions Diane couldn't answer. You're working nights now? Since when? Jade stirred her latte with aggressive precision. And who is this Matt person who keeps calling you? My boss. He owns the Crimson Rose. Your boss who sends you home in private cars with security? It's New Orleans. It's dangerous at night. You're lying to me. I can see it all over your face. Jade leaned forward, 21 years old and too perceptive for her own good. What's really going on? Diane wanted to tell her. Wanted to explain that she was falling for a 300-year-old vampire king while rival covens circled and supernatural politics threatened to explode into violence. Instead she said, "I'm fine. Just trust me. Please." Jade didn't look convinced, but she dropped it. The lies were piling up, each one another brick in the wall separating Diane's old life from the darkness she'd chosen to inhabit. The formal challenge came 3 days later. The Rousseau coven demanded a meeting, Matt's territory in exchange for peace, specifically the Crimson Rose and surrounding blocks. "They think you're weak because of me," Diane said, watching Matt read the letter in his office. "Because you're protecting immortal. Let them think what they want." Matt's expression was granite. "They're not getting the Crimson Rose. It's where I found you." "Matt, this is insane. It's just a building." "It's not just a building. It's the place where I learned what it felt like to be seen as human. Where I fell in love with a waitress who remembered how I take my water." His eyes met hers. "I've given up territories before. Negotiated. Compromised. But not this. Never this." The hunters came on a Tuesday morning. Diane woke to the sound of her apartment door splintering. 3 men burst in, human, armed with weapons she didn't recognize but knew instinctively were designed to kill vampires. Silver. Wood. Ancient symbols carved into metal. "Diane Simmons," the leader said, leveling a crossbow at her chest. "You're coming with us. Damien's weakness. His mortal pet. He'll come for you, and when he does we'll finally put him down." Terror locked her muscles. She couldn't scream, couldn't move. This was it. This was how she died. Caught in the crossfire of supernatural war she'd never asked to be part of. The window exploded inward. Matt and Luca crashed through in a storm of broken glass and violence. What followed happened too fast for Diane's eyes to track. Matt moved like a force of nature. Inhumanly fast, brutally efficient, utterly merciless. The hunters didn't stand a chance. When it was over, 3 bodies lay on her apartment floor, and Matt stood in the center of the carnage with blood on his hands and murder in his silver eyes. Diane pressed herself against the wall, shaking. She'd seen him protective before, seen him threatening. But this was different. This was the Vampire King unleashed. The predator with 3 centuries of killing behind him and no mercy left in his ancient heart. They came for her at dawn. Vampire hunters with silver bullets and ancient grudges. They knew she was Matt's weakness, the mortal thread that could unravel a king. And as Diane stood in that apartment with death mere seconds away, she realized the truth. Loving Matt Damien meant being hunted by both sides. The vampires who wanted him destroyed. The hunters who wanted him dead. And Matt himself, who would burn the entire city to ash if they hurt her. This is the moment everything changes. This is where Diane stops being a victim and becomes something else entirely. Subscribe now to see the transformation. To witness what happens when a mortal woman stops asking for permission and takes her power back. The climax is here and blood will be spilled. "You're a killer," Diane whispered. Matt's eyes found hers. "I'm a vampire. It's what we are. But I've never lied to you about it. They're dead. They would have tortured you to draw me out. Then killed you anyway." His voice was flat, factual. "I don't apologize for protecting you." Luca appeared at Matt's shoulder. "We need to move her. More might be coming." "No." Diane's voice cracked. I need space. I need to think." Matt's expression shuddered. "Of course. Luca will take you somewhere safe. Alone. I need to be alone." "That's not possible right now." "Then I'm leaving. I'm done with this. With you. With all of it." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Matt went very still, and for a moment Diane saw genuine pain flash across his face before the mask returned. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you," he said quietly. "I'll protect you from a distance. You'll never see me again. But you'll be safe. I promise you that." He walked out of her apartment, leaving Luca to coordinate cleanup and security. Diane packed a bag with shaking hands, clothes, toiletries, her laptop. She'd go stay with Jade. Figure out her next move. Get far away from vampires and hunters and impossible love that came with a body count. She made it to the door before her hands stopped working. 3 years of Wednesday midnights. 3 years of careful distance that had felt like torture. 3 weeks of finally letting herself feel what she'd been suppressing. The want, the attraction, the terrifying realization that Matt Damien saw her in a way no one else ever had. The monster who looked at her like she was his salvation. Diane dropped the bag. She walked out of her apartment past Luca's raised eyebrows, past the vampire guards, all the way back to the Crimson Rose as the sun set over New Orleans. Matt was standing at the bar, glass of whiskey untouched in front of him. He looked up when she entered, hope and fear warring in his expression. "You came back." "I'm terrified," Diane said, walking toward him. "Of you. Of this. Of how much I want you even though you're dangerous and deadly and everything I should run from." "Then run." His voice was raw. "Diane, please. Run. Be safe. Be human. Forget you ever knew me. I'm staying." She closed the distance between them and kissed him, desperate, reckless, inevitable. Matt froze for half a heartbeat, then his restraint shattered completely. His hands came up to frame her face, cold against her flushed skin, and he kissed her back with 3 years of suppressed wanton centuries of loneliness finally breaking free. When they separated, both breathless, Matt rested his forehead against hers. "I've never wanted anything the way I want you," he whispered. "And that terrifies me more than any hunter or rival coven ever could." "Then stop holding back," Diane said. "Stop protecting me from yourself. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Knowing what I am. Knowing exactly what you are." Matt's eyes blazed silver in the dim restaurant light. And when he kissed her again, Diane tasted danger and desire and the impossible truth that sometimes love meant surrendering to the darkness instead of fighting it. She'd finally stopped running. And the vampire king she'd been falling for since the first Wednesday midnight 3 years ago was right there to catch her. The summons came on black parchment sealed with blood-red wax. The Vampire Council, ancient, powerful judge and executioner of their kind, demanded Matt's presence in Vienna to answer for his relationship with Immortal. "They can order 3 things," Matt explained, his voice tight as he stared at the letter. "Force me to turn you. Command your death. Or strip my territory and title." Diane's blood ran cold. "What will you do?" "Refuse all 3. His eyes met hers, blazing with defiant certainty. "You're mine. And you're human. Both things are true. I won't let ancient bureaucrats dictate our future." He left for Vienna the next night. When he returned 4 days later, his expression was grim. "They gave me an ultimatum. Turn you within 1 month or face challenge for my throne." Matt took her hands, his touch cold and careful. "Diane, I'm offering you the choice now before politics force it. Let me turn you. Become what I am. We'll have forever." The word hung between them, forever. Infinite nights. Eternal youth. Never aging, never dying, never leaving him. Never seeing another sunrise. "No," Diane said quietly. Matt flinched. "No. I won't choose immortality out of fear. Or politics. Or because some ancient vampires think they can control our lives." She cupped his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "If I ever make that choice, it'll be because I want it. Not because I have to." For a moment she thought he'd argue. Instead he kissed her forehead gently. "Then we'll find another way. I didn't survive 3 centuries by accepting ultimatums." The Rousseau coven made their move during what should have been a diplomatic meeting. Diane had been in Matt's office at the Crimson Rose, reviewing inventory when they'd come through the windows. Fast, brutal, coordinated. She'd fought back with the silver letter opener Matt kept on his desk, but there were too many. When she woke, she was in a warehouse that smelled like rotten river water, bound to a chair with Genevieve Rousseau circling her like a predator assessing prey. "The king's weakness," Genevieve purred, her accent thick Cajun. "The mortal he'd burn the world for. Such a predictable flaw." Diane's wrists burned against the ropes, but she'd been paying attention during her months in Matt's world. Vampire arrogance was its own weakness. "You think he'll negotiate for me? I think he'll walk into our trap trying to save you. And when he does, we'll take his head and his territory." "You're wrong about one thing." Diane smiled despite the fear coursing through her. "I'm not his weakness. I'm his reason." The warehouse door exploded inward. Matt arrived like a storm made flesh. Eyes blazing silver, fangs descended, radiating power that made the air itself vibrate. Luca and 6 other vampires flooded in behind him, but Matt was focused solely on Diane with an intensity that was both terrifying and beautiful. "Let her go," he said, voice dropping to something ancient and lethal, "and I'll make your deaths quick." Genevieve laughed. pressing a silver blade against Diane's throat. One step closer and Diane drove her head backward into Genevieve's face, feeling cartilage crunch. In the half-second of shock, she wrenched one hand free. The ropes had been loosening for the past 10 minutes while she'd kept Genevieve talking, and grabbed the silver blade, slashing at the vampire's hand. Genevieve shrieked and stumbled back. Diane rolled out of the chair as chaos erupted around her. Matt and Luca's coven clashed with the Russos in a blur of supernatural speed and violence. Diane grabbed a broken chair leg, wood sharp perfect, and drove it into the chest of a Russo vampire lunging for Matt's back. The vampire crumbled to ash. Matt spun, seeing her standing there armed and fierce, and something in his expression shifted. Pride. Recognition. Love that transcended species and mortality. "That's my girl," he breathed. The final confrontation came down to Matt and Genevieve in the center of the warehouse. Single combat. Old rules. Winner takes all. It was over in minutes. Matt was older, stronger, and fighting for something Genevieve could never understand. Not territory or power but love. When she fell, defeated but alive, Matt stood over her with glacial fury. "Tell the council," he said loud enough for all witnesses, "that Matthias Damien keeps his throne, his territory, and his mortal. And anyone who challenges that will face the same fate." Genevieve fled. The remaining Russos scattered. And Matt crossed the warehouse to pull Diane into his arms, checking her for injuries with hands that trembled slightly. "You saved me," he murmured against her hair. "We saved each other. That's how this works." 8 months later, the Crimson Rose thrived under Diane's management. She'd become a fixture in New Orleans' supernatural community, the King's Mortal, a position of respect and curiosity. Some vampires thought Matt was insane for loving a human. Others saw it as a sign of strength, that he could be both predator and partner. Diane had learned to exist in both worlds, one foot in daylight and humanity, the other in the darkness Matt ruled. Tonight, after closing, they stood together at the bar where this had all begun. Matt pulled a small box from his pocket, not ring-sized but close. "It's not an engagement ring," he said, opening it to reveal a silver band engraved with symbols she'd learned were protection wards. "It's a promise. When you're ready, if ever, I'll be waiting." 8 months. That's how long Diane had to decide between dawn and eternal night. Between growing old with memories or staying young in darkness. Matt never pressured her. Never promised it would be easy. He only offered truth. "Choose me and you choose forever. Choose yourself and I'll love you until your last breath." But here's what the Vampire King didn't say, what Diane discovered on her own. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose the impossible. Sometimes love means surrendering everything you thought you needed to become who you were always meant to be. Subscribe to see Diane's final choice. To witness whether mortality wins or if eternity claims another soul. Because this ending? It's not what you expect. And you won't want to miss a single word of what comes next. Subscribe now. The transformation is complete. Diane slipped the ring onto her finger. Maybe someday. But not today. Today I choose this. Mortal and immortal. Impossible and real. I'll wait. Forever if I have to. You won't have to wait forever. She kissed him softly. Just let me live first. Then we'll talk about eternity. Matt pulled her close, and they stood in the Crimson Rose at midnight. The Vampire King and his mortal queen, together in the darkness that had brought them together and the light she still carried within her. Outside, New Orleans pulsed with life and death and everything between. Inside, two impossible lovers had found something rarer than immortality. They'd found choice. She chose the night. But on her terms. In her way. And that made all the difference.